And in Israel, when passing the bar, Ben-Gurion insisted that we translate our name into Hebrew, and this it came from Golub, Russian Golub, to Hebrew Tori. It is, from the Song of Songs, the Bible. Tor, השמש זורחת והגפן פורחת וכל התור נשמע בארצנו. The voice of the turtle dove is listened in our country. And so my name is Tori, a member of the Toris family. Yes.
And where were you born? And
I was born in a very little townlet, Lazdijai, Lazdijai, Lazdijai. And I was born on the 10th of December 1909. I would not take under oath that this is the exact date of my birth, because in the time of the First World War, my little town was in fire and all the documents were burned. So I had to go to court after I was already graduated law in order to get a decision of court that I was really born on the 10th of December 1909.
Avi, you've said that after the Nazi invasion in June of 1941 that you went from the frying pan to the fire. What do you mean by that?
Now look, I was a Zionist. On the outbreak of the war between Germany and Poland, I attended the Zionist World Congress, the 21st Zionist World Congress in Geneva, Switzerland, which was the last Congress before the Holocaust. This Congress came to an end on the outbreak of the war between Germany and Poland. And then Professor Chaim Weizmann, then president of the Zionist organization, his last moving words at the Congress, I remember till today. We have to bring the Congress to an end. Who knows when we'll meet, where we'll meet, and who will meet. And this was very, very meaningful, especially to me, and not only to me. So I went back to Lithuania at that time, and when I came to Lithuania, it was in 1939, the Congress in August. In next June 1940, the Soviets occupied Lithuania. And when the Soviets occupied Lithuania, so I was arrested, not only myself, I was a member of the Zionist Central Committee. At the Congress, I was the youngest delegate. And nevertheless, we were the General Zionist Youth Movement, and I was the chairman of it. So we insisted, we were fighters, all the time we were fighters, to have a seat on the Central Committee of the General Zionists in Lithuania. So I became a member of the Central Zionist Committee in Lithuania. And when the Soviets occupied Lithuania, they took and arrested the leaders of the Zionist organization, but they took also arrest myself. And what I cannot understand to this very day, they interrogated me and they questioned me. You were at the World Gathering, they didn't say Congress, World Gathering, Zionist. Disclose to us what a complot, it means what would I say, did you make, what a secret plan did you make with Professor Weizmann, did I make with Professor Weizmann against the Soviet Union? And I didn't believe my ears. And I laughed, but instead, when I laughed, I got immediately smacked in the face. What are you laughing? You should answer when you're being questioned. So I said, I don't even know Professor Weizmann. So he says, you are lying like a dog. There is a special expression in Russian, vrешь как собака. You are lying like a dog. You were at the World Gathering of the Zionists. Professor Weizmann was the president of the gathering, and you say that you don't know Weizmann. Trach, trach, trach. So I said, everybody knows Weizmann, Professor Weizmann. But Professor Weizmann to this very day doesn't know that there exists such a man by the name of Avram Golub. But he didn't tell. I should disclose to them what plans of destruction did I have with Professor Weizmann against the Soviet Union. Well, this is to show you only one. Second, I, as a Zionist and professor, my patron, my famous and beloved patron, Professor Simon Bielatsky, who was a famous professor at the University of Petersburg, which is now Beck Petersburg. After the first revolution, he ran away from Petersburg and he came to Kovno, Lithuania, and there he was admitted as a professor of civil law, although he was a Jew, although he didn't speak Lithuanian a word, but he was of world fame. And he wrote several monumental books on his civil law, in copyright, and so on. And I was lucky enough to write my thesis, what you call in other languages the doctorate. I wrote with Professor Bielatsky. And when I passed all the exams, and I was waiting for the evaluation of my thesis that I submitted to Professor Bielatsky, and then I was invited at his law offices. And then he asks me, what do you want to do with yourselves when you graduate law? I says, Professor, I want to be a lawyer. You know what does it mean to be a lawyer? That means a lawyer means to be 24 hours a day a lawyer. So I thought, Professor, how could it be? Even a lawyer has to sleep as everyone. Yes, it's exactly what I wanted to tell you, that in your dreams, you would dream about the mistakes you have done the day and don't repeat it the next day. This is a lawyer. And when several times he asked me, and it is very difficult, it's very... So he said, are you sure you want to be a lawyer? I says, yes, Professor, by all means. But I wanted to know what is the results of my thesis. I didn't know it yet. So then he takes out from his drawer my thesis and he hands me over, and I see there was written excellent. And I remember the thesis was mortgage and lien in the Roman and Russian law. It was in 1933. So then he said, are you sure you want to be a lawyer? Tomorrow come to my office and you'll work with me. And this was by the end of 1933, because in order to work as a lawyer, you had to have 6 months preparatory in a court. But then in 1939, the Lithuanian Minister of Justice, he was not less a Nazi than the Nazis themselves, and he kicked out my professor and myself, and he didn't allow any Jews to be accepted in court, even like practitioners. But I was lucky. I was a member of the Maccabi, active member of the Maccabi sports movement, and I was in permanent relations with the Lithuanian National Sports Club, LFLS. And the man of LFLS was also at the Faculty of Law, Penchila. and he graduated the very same month like I. He was immediately nominated as a magistrate court in my native shtetl. So I went to him, since I couldn't get in any court, I couldn't get any position place to make my 6 months stage. I went to him and said, Penchila, look, we are both sportsmen. We were so many years together in Maccabi and you were in the LFLS Sports Club. Would you engage me as your practitioner at your court? We graduated the same month. So he couldn't refuse. He said, Golub, it's against all instructions I have, but simply I cannot refuse you. We were so many years in the sports field. We were 4 years at the same law school, and I just cannot refuse. I take the risk. So I worked with him for half a year in the civil court, and only then in the magistrate I could start practicing at Professor Bilatsky's office. You understand? And here again, Professor Bilatsky was a great jurist. In addition, he was a man of esprit, of talent, of spirit. He, in addition to writing his monumental works on civil law, that a generation was educated on his books, he wrote also a book, The Man and His Destiny. And this is certain jokes, certain serious things about the man and his destiny. He told me, look, you work in my office, you must not sit all the hours from 8 to 6 or from 4 to 8. You have to do your work. When you finish the work, go home. You didn't finish, sit until 12. You see? And we had in that time, in those years, we didn't have such pens like today. It was, you had to write with ink. And when you wrote with the pencil on the paper, it used to say trrr, trrr. So you don't have to say trrr. Finish the work, do the work, don't. And he was the best lawyer in Lithuania. He used to appear mostly in the Supreme Court of Lithuania and in the Supreme Military Court. And what is important for my beloved patron, he himself escaped from the revolution, from the communists, and came to Lithuania. But here in Lithuania, he appeared in the military courts as counsel for the communists who were brought to trial for belonging to the Communist Party. Leave alone if they would have done some sabotage or something like that. But the very fact that they belonged to the Communist Party, it was enough to give them 12 years in jail. And he defended them. He defended them, and he explained it clearly. For he is, what he told me, a lawyer must be 24 hours a lawyer. If somebody goes wrong, if done injustice to somebody, you have to defend. A murder is a right to get defense. A lawyer should defend him. For the court is to decide whether he's guilty or not guilty, but he has the right for defense. And the same goes for the communists.
Avraham, tell me, we were talking about writings and how he wrote. When did you start to write your diary?
Yes. Well, on the 22nd of June, the war broke out. Early in the morning, we heard the bombardments, and over the radio, war. The very simple word of war took me, and I was all the time attached to the radio, and then the Kovno was bombarded in all, first of all the airport, and then the military, and then all the town was in flames. So we tried to escape, and the Russians, the Soviets were taken by surprise, and they rushed out of Kovno. They left the prison closed without any guard. And the prisoners then at night felt that there were no guards, so from inside they break through and they went to freedom. But and everybody tried to get any vehicle to run away from the bombardments. And I was at that time with my sister at my sister's home, and my sister and my brother-in-law were waiting for a relative of my brother-in-law to take them after midnight with a wagon with horses, because when if you would go in daytime, they would take away the horses and wagon for the military. And while waiting there, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, I was so much impressed and overwhelmed of the blitzkrieg of the Germans. It was just terrible. So I found a sheet of paper on the table of my brother-in-law, and I started to write. And I have it with me here for 2 pages from both sides. I've written from 12 to 2:30 after midnight, when the man came with his wagon to take us out of town. And this is the first entry in my diary, and I have it here with me. And then I tried to escape, and I did not succeed. On the way, I took a bicycle, and I almost, let's say, 70 miles I made by bicycle towards the frontier with Russia. But in the meantime, the Germans caught us up, and I had to go back. The story of going back to Kovno is a story that is ready with me for another book that did not include in this diary.
Why? What happened?
Because immediately, from each and every corner, from each and every farm, Lithuanian partisans, so-called partisans, attacked Jews. They took off from them any valuable. They took the money. The Lithuanians didn't sell bread for those retreating. And so I saw that it is dangerous to go on the highway. So I left the highway and I went to the fields, to the gardens, forests, all around. It took me 3 days to go back to Kovno. 3 days and 3 nights. And this is a story. I could be 10 times killed because the bombardments were without end. On the way to the frontier and back. Because every time when it was a bombardment, we used to leave the highway. The highway was packed with Red Army soldiers retreating, with families, with vehicles, with wagons, with push carts, by foot, and myself, my bicycle, yes.
And you were by yourself?
I myself, yes. I'll tell you why by myself. I was married then. But we were of the opinion that the only in danger are the men, that the Germans might take them to work for the army. And therefore the men used to run away. Others went away full families. So I went away and I left my first wife at home with her parents and so on. But I didn't succeed. And so it took me 3 days to come back to Kovno. And these 3 days, I wrote 54 pages of what happened to me. Because on every place I could encounter a Lithuanian extremist, fascist, would kill on the spot. I didn't have the money to pay them for a piece of bread. Before, they used to give bread and milk. The Lithuanian, this is no problem, bread, eat. everybody would offer you bread and milk, but then they paid, and then they didn't take the rubles. They asked for coins, golden coins, and so on. It was a terrible. So finally, to cut a long story short, I finally came to the outskirts of Kovno, and it was in Kovno there was a famous and most neglected suburb of Slobodka. Slobodka is a center, world center of Talmudic scholars, of yeshivot. But it was a very much neglected suburb. And I was supposed to pass the suburb and come to my place. I lived on the hill. So when I came in, I was entirely exhausted. I was full of dust. I didn't wash for 3 days, leave alone to shave. So I went I saw a well. So I asked from a distance the Lithuanian woman, would she allow me to wash myself in the well? So she told me that I should come nearer to her. And then she disclosed to me that her son is a partisan. And if he'll see me, he'll kill me. So she let me in somewhere in a hiding place, and there I wash myself and I say, no, tell me which way is now to go to Slobodka, to the suburb of Kovno, in order to reach Kovno. She says, don't dare to go to Slobodki. A night before, they massacred 1,000 Jews in Slobodki, yes, from the 25th to the 26th of June 1941.
And when she told you that, could you believe what she said?
I didn't believe, but she told me, don't go because you'll be killed. So it was enough for me. So she said, the best thing what you can do, you cross the river, Nieman. There is a boat, you'll hire a boat, and they'll take you over there, and then you go up to and this is what I've done. And this is how I rescued my life. And when I came back home, and it was entirely a different Kovno. The Jews closed themselves up behind the curtains and closed doors. They didn't go to the shops and to their businesses, because the Lithuanians already started to attack Jews wherever they could meet them in the streets. They dragged them from their courtyards, sometimes from the buildings, from the apartments. They used to rape women, and it was a terrible situation that was absolutely. They used to go. The streets of Kovno were full of groups of partisans, leading groups of Jews, circled and brought them either to prison, and when the prison was full, they brought them to certain centers, and therefore to the fortresses. Kovno was around with 9 fortresses.
Did you see this? Did you see them rounding the different Jews?
Of course I've seen it, because I am not a man to close myself behind a shelter. So I went out in the street, and I wanted to know what's going on. What is the community? What is this? What is that? So I was told that the chief rabbi's home, not at his office, because the Bolsheviks annulled all the Jewish institutions at the time of the occupation of the year. So I went to the chief rabbi's office, and there I could learn that some community leaders are get together and are consulting, exchanging information, seeing what can be done. And then I used to come almost every day to that place, and when they organized, when the order came that Jews have to the expulsion of Jews from Kovno to the ghetto, latest until the 5th of August 1941. That means within a month's time, all Jews from Kovno, approximately 35,000, but 5,000 were killed in the unrest before that. So they should be in the ghetto. And on the 15th of August 1941, Kovno should be Judenrein, clean of Jews.
How did you hear of that order?
This was on all. It was publicized on all the walls by radio, in the paper, in the daily papers. It was not a secret. But you see, all those have read and have read. I took 1 or 2 or 3 with me in a pocket, and this is why I could submit it, present it to the federal court in Tampa when I appeared against the Lithuanian mayor who was nominated by the Nazis as mayor of Kovno. And when he was brought to trial, and he said, I love so much Jews, and he was, what are you talking about? Well, so I presented to the federal court judge this publication, expulsion order number 1 from the 10th of July 1941, saying that the Jews must leave Kovno, old and young, men and women, Lithuanian citizens of Lithuania or citizens of whatever, Jew, must go to the ghetto. Signed by Balchauskas and by the Lithuanian commandant of Kovno.
How did people react to this? How did you react?
Wait a minute. So this is what the rabbis. I was a young man. I only for curiosity, because of being, maybe being the Russians, there is such saying, a zhilka to public. They say that there are 2 kinds of men. People are divided in two sorts, 2 kinds, whatever you say. One who have appetitus societatis. It means they have an appetite to live in the society. You see, be active in the society. This is in Latin, appetitus societatis. This is one group of people, and the other group of people were homo homini lupus est. A man to a man is a wolf. It means who don't love people, you see. I belong to the first category. And how? As I could prove with what I have done before, many years before, and especially in the wartime.
So when you heard that order?
So when I heard that order, we went, as I said, 3 lawyers, young lawyers, and when it was organized, the commission, wait a minute. Then one day, on the 7th of August 1941, no, on the 7th of July 1941, that's more precise in my book, a Gestapo officer came to the chief rabbi's home to take him to the Gestapo. But he was very ill. He had a stomach trouble, and there was a roar going inside his body to digest, you see. So he showed them that he cannot move. So they told him to give us names of public community leaders. So he gave them 3 names. One was the Garfunkel, who was a member of the parliament. This other one was Jacob Goldberg, also a lawyer, who was the head of the volunteers for the Lithuanian independence, fought an officer. And the third one was Dr. Rabinovich, who was he studied in Germany and he was well acquainted. He was a physician. So they went and took all 3 of them separately and brought them to they didn't tell them where they take them, what they take them, what for, nothing. They just brought them to the Gestapo, and there were they summoned. Before going in to the chief of the Gestapo, the chief asked, is there anyone among these 3 a rabbi? So they say no. So ordered they should bring a rabbi or two. So they went and brought two rabbis. One rabbi was Snieg, who was the chaplain, the chief chaplain in the Lithuanian army, and the other one was Shmukler, Rabbi Shmukler from Shansi, who became very famous later. And while Rabbi Shmukler was quiet, the chaplain all the time said, the prayer before death, you see, vidui, because he was sure they're taking him to death. And when they brought in, they took them into the office. There were two gentlemen. One was a General Paul, who was the commander of the German forces in Lithuania. The second one was Jäger, who was the Standartenführer of the Gestapo, chief of the Gestapo. And the general told them, look, you know what's going on in the city. People are being killed, the Jews are being arrested. We came here to bring order, and we cannot let this situation go on. The Lithuanians say they don't want to dwell with you, so you must go to the ghetto. So Garfunkel, who was a member of the parliament, and we knew well, said, let us talk to Lithuanians. He says, with which Lithuanians do you want to talk? They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to live, to dwell with you. And but if you have to go to the ghetto, and the ghetto is earmarked for Slobodka, and he had a map according that all of the area of Slobodka should be earmarked for the ghetto. So the Jews said, the commission, in Slobodka lived in all the times 8,000 people. In Kovno there are 30,000 Jews. How do you want to squeeze in? So he says, all right, you can take another space. Anyhow, so he said, we are not authorized to give an answer with regard to being expelled from the city. We have to think and to bring to the... So I said, I give you time until tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Bring us the... If your reply will be positive, I'll order that this should immediately stop, these killings and robbing of goods and raping of women. It should stop immediately. And in addition, I'll order to release 3,000 women and children who are in the prisons and in the force under arrest. And this was a very great incentive to the thoughts of the Jews. And then they met again at the rabbi's office. I was there all the time, and they decided that there is no way out otherwise. There was no way. It's not they will not go. So they will expel us. And this is the order gave that it was from the 10th, formally the 10th of July was published, the order in all the papers, in the radio, on the walls. There are all information. So I took, I think several. And what remained, this what helped me in the Pachauskas case in Tampa, Florida. And then, later, they gave an order that the Jews should nominate an Oberjude. It means a chief Jew, a chief Jew. And all these nominations, Ältestenrat means a council of elders, to remind you the elders of Zion. You understand? All this is aimed to dehumanize, to degrade, to hurt the feeling of yours as a Jew and so on. And this was the most dramatic and the most historic last meeting of the Jewish community in Kovno.
What?
On the 4th of August 1941, at a school, they said the most prominent leaders of the community were still alive. because many were already killed. Approximately 5,000 Jews were killed on the roads, in the city, and so on. And then it was opened, the assembly was opened by Dr. Gregory Wolf, one of the very veteran leaders of the Jewish community in Kovno.
And you were there?
There couldn't be any assembly without Avraham Kolb. It just doesn't go. Because, I'm telling you, I was sitting in the rabbi's apartment, and I listened to everything. I heard the report, the first heard report was I. It was them. When they came back from the committee, I will not enlarge what happened to them. They were arrested on the way from the Gestapo to their home by Lithuanians, and among these, Goldberg, who was a military officer, a high officer in the Lithuanian army, he tried to speak to the military commandant of Kovno, with whom he was in the same military school. But this denied all. It's a too long way. We have to make it short. So this Goldberg went to one of his fellows, well known, that was established a new ministry, as if they would gain independence, the Lithuanians. They sent cables of gratitude to Hitler, signed by the Archbishop Skvireckas, by the Bishop Brizgis, thanking him for liberating Lithuania from the Soviets. You see? And so the Lithuanians, and they immediately established a cabinet of ministers of Lithuania as if they would gain independence. But the Germans never thought of giving them independence.
Right, so Avraham, tell me about the assembly, about the meeting.
Yes. So the assembly, Gregory Wolf was the chairman, and he spoke in very, very cloudy expressions and cloudy pictures of the situation outside the school where the meeting took place. And he said that children are being killed, or women are being raped, or men are being taken to slavery, arrested, and so on. There was not in the history of Jews a situation like that. But nevertheless, there were situations, hard situations, and the Jewish people always, the Hamans in the past, all their end was so that we survived them, and he hopes that Haman of this time, Hitler will also, his hand will be the Hamans in the history of Jewish people. But nevertheless, in describing the terrible situation of the Jews, the desperate situation, he collapsed and he couldn't continue to talk. Then came the problem. The order of the Germans is that the Jews have to nominate a chief Jew. And if the Jews themselves will not nominate the chief Jew, they will nominate themselves. And we had already the terrible experience of other places where they nominated, a man with no responsibility, with no background, so there was also among the candidates was Dr. Elkes. The first candidate was, of course, Garfunkel, who was a member of the parliament, the head of the Jewish fraction in the parliament. For instance, that Goldberg, who was a front camper, a fighter for the Lithuanian independence, they had orders, but they absolutely refused to take over the office because they knew this is going to be a servant, a tool in the hands of the German, of the Nazis, and nobody wanted to betray his community, his Jewish people. More so that at that time we knew already that the chief Jew from Vilna, Dr. Vygotsky, a very famous Jewish leader, community leader, he became suicidal. So nobody wanted to take over, and there was a stalemate. No way out. Nobody wants to take any office. So then stood up Shmukler, Rabbi Shmukler, who was a absolutely unknown rabbi from a suburb of Shanzai. And he stood up, but who was the main candidate where everybody agreed and everybody wanted? Dr. Elkes. Why Dr. Elkes, Elchanan Elkes? Because he was one of the best physicians in Lithuania. He was the private physician of the German ambassador and of the Soviet ambassador and of all ambassadors. So they thought that he might, because of his relationship, being a private doctor of the German ambassador, he might have some influence and maybe do some good or avoid some hardships and so on. But of course this had nothing to do with it.
How did he respond to the nomination?
I'll tell you, before I answer, he said no, because according to the Germans, we have to go to the ghetto. There we will have a municipality for ourselves. We'll have our own community, a closed community. No Lithuanian will be allowed, no German will be allowed to go inside. You'll be free to manage your life as you can. So it was supposed to be a chairman of the municipal council. So Dr. Elke said, I have no experience at all in municipal work. I never have done anything but physician. He was the head of the interior department of the Jewish big hospital in Lithuania, Bikur Hoilim. And I said I was all my life a doctor. And I have any whatsoever experience in municipal.
So what persuaded him?
So then it was a stalemate. Nobody, and the Germans said if we will not nominate, they will nominate, and this was the worst thing that could happen to us. And people were in despair. So then stood up the Rabbi Shmukler, and he said, Rabotai, I appeal to Dr. Elkes. Everybody sees you as the most suitable to be a head of our community in this unusual, unique time of risks and despair. You have the experience as a great doctor. You know the German ambassador, and you, for whom you'll be a chief Jew, a Oberjude, for us you'll be the respected Rosh HaKahal, the head of the community. And Shlichei Mitzvah Einam Nizakim, those who fulfill a mitzvah, a mission of mitzvah, of good doing, they can never fail and they can never be hurt. And we will go with you until the end, and we will help you and we'll assist you, we'll be at your hand at any time. And so now be our Rosh HaKahal here, our head of the community here, and you will, with God's help, as a rabbi, of course, with many God's help that I don't repeat so much, with God's help, you lead us to the end of the war, and you take us out from the ghetto, which is a galut inside galut, and you bring us to the fatherland in Eretz Israel, and there you'll be the head of a community, and so on and so on. Everybody was in tears. He was so emotional, and he was so persuasive. And Dr. Elke stood in the corner side, he never stood in the first rows, and he stood up, and he said, if you all think that it is me that must be the chief Jude, the Oberjude, I am here. It means he sacrifices himself for the community. If this must be, I am here. And when he said I am here with you. So this was a great relief in the hall, and everybody stood up on on their feet, and they congratulated Elkes, and they shook hands with him. It was a most emotional scene that can never be forgotten until the rest of my life. And then he took his post as chair on the chair of the chairman, and then I, and together with two other lawyers, young lawyers, we came to him and we said, Dr. Elkes, we greet you, and we are place ourselves from now on to your entire disposition. May ever be what may be, we are with you. And we will, and we were young lawyers. I was a speaker.
Why did you do that? Did you know him?
Because I knew.
Why did you have such faith in him?
I'll tell you, there was not a person in Lithuania that didn't know the best the doctor in addition. I knew Dr. Elkes because the only thing that he was never a member of any Zionist party, was never any committees. He was a doctor, 100%. But he was one of the 3 trustees of the Akshara farm in Lithuania. We bought in Lithuania land, and for the Chalutzim, prior to making their aliyah to Eretz Israel, they were trained in agriculture in order to prepare them to the life in agriculture.
But tell me, why did you have so much faith in him? What kind of person was he?
Just a minute. So, first of all, you should know who were the 3 trustees of the Akshara. This is a pioneer. He was also their doctor, and he was out the money, and because we, as a chairman of the Zionist youth movement, I knew him from that Akshara, and many knew him. And most of the people knew in Israel, in Lithuania, of Dr. Elkes as a very, very broad-minded physician. He was the physician of the president, of the prime minister, and of the poorest people who we gave medical help without any pay.
How would you describe him as a person?
Let me tell you. First of all, you should know Elkes was born not far away from my townlet, Calvaria. And there he got a very strong religious education. There were no schools at that time. He was born in 1870, more or less. At that time, there were no schools. There were only yeshivot for the bigger one, and there were only a rebbe and a cheder, where they taught the children to learn A, B, C, and to pray. You see, and he got a very strong religious education from the very youth. And then, in his own way, he made, his doctor degree. Nobody knows how he managed it. How he went to Königsberg and he studied medicine without even prior graduating law, so he had to make exams, especially, and so on. But this is what he was. He was a very well-known, and he was well-known because of his great understanding for the needy and for the poor, for the chalutzim, and not only for the Jewish needy, for others. You see, he was a great man, and at the same time he didn't raise his nose up.
He was a generous man.
He was a most generous man and known like that. He was a very rich man. He was a very rich man. And mind you, I want to jump now, in his last will, in the ghetto, he wrote to the ghetto in 1943 in Hebrew language, which he handed over to me before I escaped from the ghetto. He didn't mention not a single word of his richness. He was a very big property in this most fashionable part of the city of Kovno. His children, he sent, because of being a rich man, he sent his two children, his son and his daughter, to London. And this is Professor Yoel Elkins, whom you met, and he was then in London. And this is the last will that he wrote to him and to his sister. And this is me that took the last will before I escaped from the ghetto. Nobody knew will I at all succeed in to pass through and so on. So he was a great Zionist, a great Jew, a great devoted Jew with a very deep feeling of Jewish heritage and responsibility. And when he took over, he was known only as a physician, only as a great physician, and we gave trust in him because of his special relationship with the German ambassador. But then he has shown himself by his day-to-day daring steps, daring resolutions. For instance, I'll give you an instance.
Tell me.
In 1940, the very beginning of the ghetto, came to me a Mr. Bramson, who was the director of a Hebrew school, and a lawyer who was not a Zionist, Zaks, and they came to me as secretary of the Jewish committee, and they told me, look, Avrom, there is a possibility to buy a gun. Can you speak to the Jewish committee that they should give money to buy the gun? So I went to Garfunkel, the deputy. She says, go, a gun. What are you talking? It's dangerous. It will be dangerous for all the ghetto. Don't mention it. So I went to Dr. Elkes. So Dr. Elkes said, go to the treasurer and tell him that I ordered that I should give to Bramson the money to buy the gun. Nothing more. Both very high morals, Jews devoted. But here is a man of decision, of daring. Here is a man of both very decent fellows. You see. Then, the first days when we came into the ghetto.
Tell me about those. Tell me about the ghetto and the creation of the ghetto.
So you see. So when, since the Lithuanian attacks on the Jews in the cities, in their dwellings, in the stores, in the streets, they attacked terribly. It was impossible to pass the street for a Jew. And I said that there were three lawyers. The second lawyer, one of the three, was killed 2 days after he was elected. On the 6th of August, they killed 1,000 Jews on the street. And among them, prominent leaders like one Tovia Shapiro and so on. So we remained the two of us. Dr. Bernstein was the elder one, so he was the secretary, and I was the deputy secretary. On the 15th of August was the last day to close up the Jews in the ghetto. But because of the riots, day in, day out, in the city, Jews left the city already by the end of July. Because there, in these areas, they were not allowed to step in. You understand? This was the situation. Jews themselves went. And then, when it came nearer to the ghetto, the Lithuanian municipality ordered that the Jews themselves should build the barbed wire fence around the ghetto. The Jews themselves. And I have a letter in my collection from the municipality of you are ordered to bring 50 Jews for the building of the gate around not the gate, but the barbed wire around the gate, and they should bring the material of that, down material. The next day you should bring 100 people, 100 Jews. And I have a photo where the Jews were building the fence around the ghetto. And this reminds me a very Russian song. I told you I know Russian. So there is a song, bricklayer, one passes by and sees bricklayers are laying brick on a building that they are building. Yes, on a wall of building. So it says, bricklayer, bricklayer. For whom do you build this building? For whom you're laying the bricks? So he said, you don't disturb me. We are very busy in building, we are building a prison for ourselves. And this what I had in mind when I saw these men building around but these were the Lithuanians, not the Germans.
Describe to me, what were the living conditions like in the ghetto?
What? Wait a minute, we are not in the ghetto yet. Wait a minute. So you see, already from before the ghetto, they were rationed. The Jews were not allowed to appear before 10 on the markets, open markets, because let the Lithuanians buy whatever it is, and whatever the rest, they should go take the Jews. But then we were not forbidden at all. And this order of the 10th of July 1941, Jews were forbidden to appear in open markets, to buy from non-Jews, to hire vehicles from non-Jews, to use help non-Jews. Absolutely. And they were rationed 100 grams bread a day, 100 gram bread a day, 125 gram meat a week, 50 grams salt a month, and that's it. So it's clear that on this no one could live. Even to starve was not enough. But what was most important, when the ghetto was closed, there were many Jewish institutions in social, medical, cultural, yeshivot, and all kinds. So, but there were all homes for orphans. So they brought on the 15th of August, when it was the last day of entering the ghetto, the Lithuanians brought in a truck, 2 trucks load of children, from orphans, from Jewish children's homes that remained there, and they poured them out on the entrance of the ghetto on the pavement, and they left.
Did you see this?
I was there. Look, first of all, you should know what I was not present and what I did not see and what I did not hear, you will not hear from me. Because I went back and forth, back and forth. So, and then we were all in ghetto.
How did you respond, Avraham, when you saw that? I mean, what did you think? What
Excuse me, the first thing to do was to alarm the medical department had excellent physicians in the ghetto, just excellent. We had excellent nurses in the ghetto. We had fire brigade, and the fire brigade came immediately, and to take these children and bring them into where we didn't have an hospital in the ghetto. We didn't have a children's home in the ghetto. Where to bring them? So we brought them in a certain place, but was formerly a school, just in order temporarily that they be under a roof. This was how the Lithuanians behaved with regard to orphans. And this will, if there is a God, I don't believe, but if there is a God, they should be punished all for that. They should never gain independence. Never, never, never. And then, 3 days after we were in Kharkiv in the ghetto, they finished the barbed wire fence around the ghetto and the gate. And then 3 days, and every day the Jewish committee had to mobilize Jewish workers for the various German places to clean the barracks, military barracks, at the Gestapo building to clean the pavement, to tailors, dressers, and all kinds of things.
Hold that thought. Are we out of tape? Answer.
Yes, degrees. We're going to change tape. We'll
Just
put
hold.
in another.